So my next question is, a lot of the terminology when it comes to reviewing and reflecting is to sit with it. So how would you sit with it, and what advice would you give to people on how to do it?
Yeah, I'm not sure I'm the best person to do that, because I have real, I mean, I have trouble sitting still, let alone sitting with it. I don't know that I necessarily agree that sitting with it is always the best approach.
Okay, cool.
I have difficulty sometimes. I mean, it's a blanket approach for any of these things is never what they're intended for. I think there are times to sit with it. I think we don't like to be uncomfortable, so we do quite often look to try and find a way out of that discomfort as quickly as possible, whereas actually sitting with it is part of the learning, and we have to feel the negatives or the uncomfortable feelings as much as we want to feel the positives. And life is about that. Nobody goes through life without having parts or moments that are uncomfortable. And I think part of building your resilience is being able to sit with those emotions and sit in those uncomfortable moments as well. But I don't know that that's always helpful. So certainly, I think there are times where actually the response is more helpful to take action and then reflect. And sometimes the response is to reflect, sit with it, and then take action. But I think it's definitely not a blanket approach. And I do see, in particular, with people who really struggle with overthinking, overwhelm, anxiety, sitting with it is not always helpful. So I think you need to build resilience to be able to sit with it. And I think it's a good practice to be able to do that, but it's recognizing when it's helpful and when it's not going to be helpful, and making that a conscious decision. I definitely speak to some people who sit with it for long periods of time and don't take action. And I also have worked with people who will avoid sitting with it and also avoid taking action, and it's almost that denial avoidance. But it's different for different people. But I think that building that resilience is being able to work with being uncomfortable and recognizing that being uncomfortable isn't always a negative. Sometimes it's uncomfortable because something is important to us. So I quite often recommend the book Sumo by Paul McGee. He calls it hippo time, that you have to sit and wallow. Sometimes you have to sit in that space and think things through, because ultimately if we're upset about something or we haven't done something that's gone the way that we wanted it to do, there's a learning to be had there. And if we try and skip past that, we don't take the learning, we don't take that time to reflect on what is important. Why am I upset about this? So what is that telling me? So it is important to do that, but we don't have to do that for everything. Sometimes it's a very quick process. It's almost like a dunk in and get back out again. And sometimes it's a slightly longer place, but it's definitely not a place to sit in for a long period of time. And I think it's finding that balance of when is it helpful and also how long is helpful. Because if you do really struggle with overthinking, the overwhelm and the anxiety, that's not going to help. So you still need to do it, but you might need to do it in a different way that helps you to move forward, so that you don't get stuck in there to the point where you've got all wrinkly fingers because you've been sat wallowing for such a long period of time. It's not helpful. So it is, again, it's a question of balance.
No, I remember like the first time someone said to me, just sit with it, and I'm like, how do you sit with it? Like, what do you do? Like, write the emotion on a bit of paper and sit and look at it. And I imagine some people do that, but I think, like, for me, I do overthink a lot. And I think once you start thinking about it, then you go on however many different tangents, and then you kind of have to just stop yourself and like snap out of it almost. But I really like the hippo analogy of you can sit and wallow for a bit and have your have your time, and then you get up and move on and go with it.